So I was going to ask you about the challenges and opportunities with, that resulted from the pandemic, or just what you're seeing in the future. But maybe I'm going to shift a bit to talk about the different ways that you bring training to your customers, to your employees. So I know there's in-house trainers, there's companies you might contract with, there's purchase training like LinkedIn and lynda.com. What are all the ways that you try to bring training to the people that you're in charge of training?
Sure. So as an organization, we have a couple different groups that do role-specific training, and we try, because we have such talented people with who we work with, is for the most part we actually build a lot of things in-house.
Mm,
Um, and so we've got a group in our property and claims department. It's a training group that they build a lot of their internal trainings that go to their agents. For us, we're corporate learning developments, and so our learning is developed specifically with the mindset of this is going to the entire organization.
right.
And so we have it's just a lot of intricate work that we go into that, and so we do a lot of in-house building, but we do offer LinkedIn Learning for all of our users as well. That's
Mm,
something that we work to build. We've built a lot of awareness to the availability that LinkedIn Learning has for our organization as well. So it's 99% in-house builds, and then we also have LinkedIn Learning. We very rarely purchase anything for any kind of external vendors.
okay.
For our
Okay.
corporate compliance, we have, I believe, just two things, and even those contracts are up in the next year or two, and those are probably going to be transitioned over to us designing them. Because
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
You said your team builds the training. Do you also deliver the training? So you have is your team in charge of delivering the training modules to staff?
So the trainings that we design are self-paced for a
Okay.
majority of them. The leadership development content, the specifically ones that we build for that, those are, as I mentioned earlier, those are hybrid, and so then yes, we do facilitate those as well.
Okay, okay, okay. That's great that you've got self-learning modules. That's really a great way to do it. So let's talk about the challenges. I know that with a lot of companies, the pandemic brought things to a head. Probably changes that were going to happen anyway. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you're feeling now, and maybe those that came with the pandemic, or just those that you're seeing now, irrespective of the pandemic?
So I always say this, and this is something that I love. As I mentioned earlier, I really really love the company that I work with. But the best thing about American National is also sometimes the worst thing about working at American National, and that is we have a lot of employee retention. So people tend to stay. They like where they are, and so they
Hmm.
tend to stay. And so, uh, especially that, and the longer you stay, then promotions, and you have leaders like that, leaders that have been with the organization for 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm,
And so the mindset of trainings, things have to be done face to face, and that's the only way that things can be done,
mm,
was very embedded in the culture and the mindset of leadership at American National. I think that that's probably very very similar for many organizations
yes.
around the world. And then when COVID hit, I remember I was actually I live in Houston, Texas, and one of our regional locations is in Springfield, Missouri. And in March of 2020, I was in Springfield, Missouri, delivering face-to-face trainings because that's what we had to do. I did, we would fly up to we had facilitators here in Houston and in Albany, and then we would kind of split who would go to Springfield. Uh, and so I flew up to Springfield to teach a week of classes. And during that entire week, I started hearing more and more about this weird thing about this virus. It was in China, and then it wasn't, and then it's going elsewhere. And then the first reported case was now in the United States, and when I left Friday afternoon, normally I leave and it's a full airplane, and the plane was half full, and I'm like, this is
Mm,
really weird. But okay, thanks. I got a whole row to myself. I go into work, back in the office that next Monday, and by 11 o'clock, we get an announcement says the entire building is going to be closed. Take everything that you need because no
mm,
one is going to be
mm,
allowed in this building for the next 2 weeks.
mm.
And
That was optimistic, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very optimistic, right? And I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually worked in the office since then, and that's
Mm.
2.5 years since then.
So
And that
huge
led
effect on
to
your train. Yeah. Go
oh
ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
so no, you're right. So it had a gigantic effect because we could no longer provide that face-to-face training because we're just not allowed to be face-to-face. And so we met as a team and and we talked about it. It's like all of our classes had to get canceled for the whole month of March and April. And so we're like, what do we do? How do we, because 50 to 60% of what we do for the organization is this. What do we do now? And thankfully with me, I had a lot of experience with hybrid learning. I did a lot of hybrid learning when I taught in K-12. I was a big
Mm.
advocate. Like I said, I taught science, and science you got to do stuff with your hands. Not that was really aggressive on the camera. Sorry about that. Um, but you got to do a lot of stuff with your hands. And so I only got 45 minutes in class, and the time to talk
Mm.
and do the lecture portion, it was just unreasonable. We had 15, 20 minutes for a lab, and so I felt like I was cheating the students. And so then I would have them, their homework would be read, get your lab journal ready, because when that bell rings, we're starting lab right away.
Hmm.
And and so I've been very adept with hybrid learning. And then I continued that same principles when I started teaching at the university level. And so when the time came to have that discussion, that was I thankfully they listened, and they thought that I had a good idea and I had a good setup. So I said, this is how we should deliver this training. We need to deliver it hybrid, have a self-paced part, and then we can just focus on like the skill practice as a webinar portion. And so then in 1 month, I built 5 web-based training courses in just a hair over a month. That was a lot. That was an intense amount of work. I don't believe I had ever worked as hard or as long or as quick as I ever had in my life. And so then by June 1st, we were delivering hybrid